Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So this is a JavaScript crash course for beginners. We will go through a couple of slides and we will understand why we need to learn JavaScript in 2021. And we will also cover a lot of JavaScript syntax and fundamentals. So if you are a beginner and looking to start learning JavaScript programming, then I recommend you to watch this crash course so that you can make most out of it. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. So we will go through some slides and understand some facts and theoretical stuffs about JavaScript. But in this quick introduction, I want to answer 3 frequently asked questions by beginners about JavaScript, and that is, what is JavaScript? What can you do with JavaScript? How JavaScript code runs. Let's start with the first question. What is JavaScript? JavaScript is a high-level, just-in-time compile programming language. Just-in-time means you don't need to compile your code before running it. It will be interpreted by the browser directly. Unlike Java, where if you want to run your code, then you need to compile it first with a program called compiler, and then you can run your code. Although Java is very different language and most beginners think they are same. But no, JavaScript and Java are completely different programming languages. JavaScript also conforms to ECMAScript specification. In fact, JavaScript is one of the implementation of ECMAScript specification. Although there are some other implementation as well like ActionScript, JScript, but they are not very popular as JavaScript. You can run JavaScript code on browser and server as well. We will see in a bit. Next, JavaScript is a dynamic typed language. That means when declaring variables, you don't need to specify type like string, numbers, which we usually do in C, C++, Java, etc. You just declare a variable with a value, and during runtime, the engine will decide the type according to the value. JavaScript is also multi-paradigm. You can write your code in many different ways. You can write object-oriented code or functional code, not unlike other languages where you need to write in a certain way. And that's why JavaScript is one of the most popular programming language. Here are some of the stats published by Stack Overflow, where you can see JavaScript is on the top of the list. And big companies like Twitter, Netflix, Facebook, Google, and Amazon hires a lot of JavaScript developers every year, as they have built a lot of applications entirely using JavaScript. Now let's see the second question. What can you do with JavaScript? You can choose a career as front-end development, where you will build UI interfaces and will be using frameworks like React, Angular, Vue. Or you can choose a back-end development, where you will write server-side logic, deal with APIs, databases, and real-time chat application using Node.js, Express. And the third option, and the most popular one, is full stack development, where with a single programming language, you can build both front end and back end. And that's the beauty of learning JavaScript. In today's world, JavaScript is all over the place. If you want to build web mobile applications or you want to build real-time chat applications, you can also build desktop applications with Electron.js, which is JavaScript library of building desktop applications, or even games. So now you must have realized how important is to learn JavaScript. And the third question is how JavaScript code runs. Let's understand with a small example. You have a simple JavaScript function that gives a sum of two numbers. You don't need to worry about functions now. It's just a theoretical concept so that you can understand how this code execution happens. Now, when this application runs in the browser renders the JavaScript code with some JavaScript render engine. And these engine execute your JavaScript code line by line. For Chrome, we have V8 JavaScript engine, and for Mozilla, we have SpiderMonkey. There is another way of executing JavaScript code, and that is Node.js, a runtime environment built on Chrome V8 engine for executing JavaScript outside your browser. So now you have good understanding of JavaScript. Let's see what are the topics we cover in this video. We will cover the basics of JavaScript, syntax, and fundamentals. We will also look on the variables, data types, operators, and conditions. We will look on the arrays, objects, how we write functions, how we write loops, constructor functions, and prototypes. And in the last, we will see for the window object, DOM manipulation, events, and some feel of ES6. So let's jump into the code. All right, guys. So now we have a simple HTML document, and first thing we are going to see is how we can add the JavaScript into our HTML document. So we can add JavaScript into our HTML document using the script tag. So I'm going to add a script tag here. All right. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'll just simply write an alert, and I will write JS tutorial. And this will simply give the browser alert on the screen. So now if I save, you can see that there is an alert saying JS tutorial. So, so this way you can add your JavaScript code, but usually we never add script tag in the head section, because if you have any error in your script tag, then the code execution will stop there itself and your HTML will not render on the screen. So we always avoid adding the script tag on the head section, and instead of that we add it in the body section. So we add the script tags at the bottom of the body. So here, and the output will still be the same, but it's always recommended to have a separate JavaScript file, and you link that JavaScript file into your HTML document. So we are going to do the same thing. So what I'm going to do, I'll just remove this alert, and in the script tag I can add a source, and I'm going to give the path of my script file. So currently I don't have any, so let's create a new JavaScript file. So I'll create a new folder. I'll name it as JS. And inside the folder, I'm creating a new file and I'll name it as script.js. Okay. And now I will just link the file here. I'm going to give a path. It's in JS and it's in script.js. All right, so now we have linked the JavaScript file, and now we don't want this HTML file anymore because we are not going to write any HTML for now. We are going to do everything in the script file. So let's go to the script file. And now in the script file, if I alert again, so this time I'm going to write simple hello. Okay. And now if I save it, so now you can see that there is an alert on the browser with hello. So now let's see what are the ways we can actually output our JS code. So obviously alert is one of the way you can do it. And the next way you can do it, if you want to accept some input from the user, you can use prompt. And when I use a prompt, I'll just type what is your name. Okay, and I'll just comment the alert because now we don't want. And if I say me now, it's prompting me that give me your name. So it will take an user input. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say Dipesh. And if I click OK, nothing will happen because we are not doing anything with the user input. But if you want to see what is the user input, next way to output a JavaScript is the console, and which is the most developers, they use console to do debugging and to print any data in the console. So let me add a console. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a console log here, and I'm going to add a console log so that I can log what the data or what the input user has entered. All right. So now if I say the page and if I write OK, then we can see it in the console. But how we go to the console? So to go to the console, it's very easy. You just have to do a right click. You click on the inspect, and inside the inspect, you can see the first tab highlighted is the element, but you need to go to the console. So this is the browser console, and in the browser console, you can see my name, the page here. And this is because we entered the page when it was prompted. So you can see that it's on the line 2. The console is from the line 2, and this is our line 2. So this is the console. So in console, I mean, you can log a lot of different things. So console log is one of the way just to log a simple data in your code. So I will just add I am in script file. So when I do this, it will simply print it on the console. But console has more methods. I mean, it's just not the log method, but you can also have more methods. So in this one, I'm going to do is console dot error. If you want to console some error on the console, you use console dot error. And when I say, I will write I am an error, and you can see that now this is the error. You have a different visualization. When it's an error, it's going to be have a red color and there is a cross mark. Similarly, we can have a warning as well. If you want to output the warning, then we can have a console warn, and I will write I am a warning. And now you can see for warning, you have a yellow triangle and then it is the different color. So this means you can see it's a warning. So apart from the warning, you can also log some normal information. So I will add console.info, and this is going to give me a normal text on the screen. I am a info. And it's going to give me a normal same. So info is more or like similar to the log, but from the name we understand if we need to output some information, we use console info. If we just need to do some output on the console, then we can use console log. If we want to output the error, we can use error. And if we want to output warning, we can use the warn. But these are not limited only 4 methods. There are more. I mean, you need to check, but I'm going to cover only 4. So I'll just going to remove this. And the next thing we are going to talk about are variables. So in JavaScript, you can declare a variable in 3 different types. So earlier it was var, but when ES6 came, the ES 2015, we say in ES 25 they introduced let and const. So let's see what actually this var is, what is this let, and what is this constant, and what actually the difference between them, which one to use when and how to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to declare a simple variable x equals to 5. All right. And then next I'm going to declare a let y is equals to 10. And the other one is I'm going to declare a const z is equals to 15. All right, so I have declared 3 variables, and so let's me console them first. So I'll write a console log, and I'm write x, and I'm just going to copy paste this for y and z, and you can see the outputs here. But if I want to change the value of z, let me assign z is equals to 20 now. And if I save, you can see I'm getting an error. And that error is because z is declared as constant and you cannot change the value of the constant. So for the constant is clearly a difference that constants are something which has to be constant throughout your application. The values cannot be changed. So you declare all the variables as constant and you only change this constant to let when actually you know that this variable has to be changed late execution of the application. So in that case, you just change the const to the let. But now what is the difference between let and variable? So when you declare something as variable or var, it has a global scope. That variable will go to the window object. We're going to see what is the window object later. Just need to understand that when you declare any variable as var, then it is having a global scope. But when you declare a variable with the let, it will have a block level scope. So to make you understand the block level scope, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to have a small if condition. And if it is true, then only I'm going to print the console of X and console of Y. All right. And when I do, so I'm just going to comment this out now. All right. So when I do this, you can see that I simply get the same output because the condition is satisfied, it's true, and you will get X and Y. I can declare a let Y is equals to 5 here. and I'm going to declare a var x is equals to 6. And if I save this time, then the value of x and y will obviously it will change because I have override the values which were previously declared. But when I want to print these two outside of this, and in this case, I'm going to comment this out. All right. So when I print this outside the block of the my if condition, you can see that I get for the line number 17, which is the x, I still can access x outside the if condition, but for y, I'm not able to access y outside the if condition. And that is because when you declare a variable as let, it will have a block level scope. That means the variable y will only be available within this block. If you try to access is outside the block, you won't be able to access it. But but on the other hand, if you declare a variable as where, you can access it anywhere in your application because it's going to be added as a global scope. It's not a good practice to add every variable to a global scope because then your global scope will get polluted and your application will behave not exactly how you want because you will never know what value of the variable is changed at what time. It's better to use constant everywhere, but if something is not being fulfilled with the constant, you change it to the let, but you avoid using variables. So these are the variables where, let, and constant. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you is the operators. So let's see what are the operators. So JavaScript has a simple operators like you have in other programming languages, like you can have, let me add a console dot log, and I'm going to simply add 2 plus 2. All right, so these are some of the arithmetic operators, and let me go to console back. And if I add 2 plus 2 is 4. If I can use the multiplication, it's going to give me 4. I can use subtraction, it's going to give me 0, and I can use divide, it's going to give me 1. So these are the arithmetic operators. But apart from these arithmetic operators, JavaScript also have an assignment operator. And the assignment operator is if I write const x equals to 10. That means the equals to is an assignment operator, and using the assignment operator, we actually assign a value to a variable. So this is the assignment operator, and if I print this constant, then I will get 10. Apart from the assignment operator, you can also use an increment operator. So for increment, I need to change the value. Let me change it to where, and you add plus plus. So when you add plus plus, it is going to the actual value. And when you do the next print, then it's going to give you an 11 because it is incremented by 1. So if you want that first the value should be incremented and then it should be printed, then you can add the plus plus here, and I'll just remove this. So in this case, it's going to give me 11. All right. Similarly, you can do the decrement operator. So minus minus. So first is going to take the current value. It will do a minus minus to it. That means it's going to decrement it by 1, and then it's going to print the value. So when I save it, I'm going to get 9. All right. So these were the operators we usually use in the JavaScript, the basic operators. Next thing we will see the data types in JavaScript. So JavaScript has primitive data types and non-primitive data types. In the primitive data types, we have the string, we have number, we have boolean, we have null, and we have undefined. We also have symbol, but symbol is not which is generally used in. I mean, I have never used symbol by myself in the coding. So we're not going to discuss symbol because it's not one which is being frequently used. So let me assign some variable. I'm going to give a name of the page. All right. Then I'm going to have an age as 29. Okay. Then I'm going to have let is programmer. I'm going to say it true. Yes, I am a programmer. Then I'm going to say no value. For no value, I'm going to give null. And then I'm going to give a let unassign, and to unassign, I'm not going to give any value to unassign. All right. So now if we want to see that the name is what is the type of the name, then we are going to do console.log. And if I write type of name, so if I write a type of name, then it should give me string because I have assigned the value string to the name. So in JavaScript, you don't need to specify the data type. You simply specify the value. And when actually the code is executed, the JavaScript engine on the runtime, it will decide that it's a string or it's a Boolean or it's a number. So if I save it now, it's going to give me a string, which is actually name is a string. So if I want to see about this, then this should give me a Boolean. And yes, it's giving me Boolean. So for the numbers, we in JavaScript, we don't have floats or decimal. We only have numbers. So if I have here, let me give you here, first I will give age. I'm sorry, we should not declare a variable with a capital. So if I want to see age, it's going to give me a number. But if I write -1, then also it's going to give me a number. Or if I write 0.5, it will still be a number because JavaScript doesn't have floats or decimals. It treats everything as numbers. So let me show you if we see the type of no value, then it's not going to give me a null. It's going to give me an object because type of null is object. And you don't ask me why why the type of null is object is actually a gotcha. So it's an exception in JavaScript that when you try to check the type of a variable which is having a null value, it's going to give you an object. So let me check for the type of unassigned, and I haven't assigned a value to unassigned variable. So whenever you declare a variable, by default, you have an undefined value in it. And when you add the value to it, then it takes the value. Otherwise, it will always give you an undefined as its value. All right. So this is why we say that JavaScript is a dynamic type language because you don't need to specify the type of the variables when you declare the variables. So if you want to have a type while declaration like let name should be a string, then you should use TypeScript instead of JavaScript because TypeScript is a typed language. And when you declare variables in TypeScript, you need to specify the type of the variable you use. So that's another topic of discussion. But I just wanted to say you that yes, I mean TypeScript is the superset of JavaScript. That means all the features of JavaScript will be there in the TypeScript. Plus TypeScript offers you some additional features. All right, so these were the data types. And now next, let's see about strings and string methods. So what I'm going to do is I'll just declare a first name, and I'm going to give first name as the page. All right. Then I'm going to give a last name, and I'm going to give a last name as Malvia. And I'm also going to create one more variable. I'm going to give languages, and the languages will be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I simply created three variables and assigned some string values. One thing I want to show that if you want to define a string, you can also define a string as let name is equals to new string, and I'm going to give as the page Malvia. Also one of the way of declaring a string, but we never use this constructor object or the constructor function to define the string, because now when you see that if I'm going to write a console.log, and if I want to have a type of, if I write a type of first name, it's going to give me a string. But if I write the type of name, it's going to give me an object and not the string. So performance wise, if you check on the performance, it's always recommended to use the simple way and not the constructor function to declare string. It's not only for the string, you can do it for numbers, booleans, for all the primitive data type we saw, you can do it. All right, so I just remove it because we don't want this part. And now if I do this first name, then I'm going to get string. So there are some of the string methods which you can use on the string. Like if I want to know the length of it, I can simply write length and I can get the length of my string. Okay. You can also use concatenate. So if I want to concatenate, then I can use concatenate method, and then I can use last name. So this is going to concatenate. And the other way if you want to concatenate is you can use it is my first name is, then if you want to concatenate it with the variable, then you put a plus sign here. Okay, and then you add your variable first name, and then you want to add a string again, then you add a plus. Now you add a string here, my last name is, you add a plus and you write a last name, and this is going to give that my first name is Dipesh, my last name is Dipesh. But there is a better way of writing using a template literal, and that ES6 way is it's very easy. You write console.log and you use backticks, and in the backticks you can simply write my first name is, and when you have to have a variable value here, you add a dollar sign, then you add a curly brace and you enter the variable name, and then you simply write my name is Dipesh and my last name is, you can dollar, and then you can add your last name, and it's going to give me the same way. So this is a much better way of writing. You avoid all the plus signs and then quotes and again plus sign and again quotes. So now let's see some of the string methods which we can use. If you want to have a substring of the complete string, then you can do that as well. So there are some of the methods in the string which you can play around with the strings. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a language and I'm going to do a substring. Okay, and on the substring, from where I want to have the substring, so I need to give the first argument as a start. So I'm going to give it from 1, and if I save it, it is going to start from the 1. That means the index of h is 0, the index of t is 1, and I need a substring which is starting from 1, so that's why it's starting from tml. And you can also add the second argument, these starting from the 1, how many characters you want more. So if I add that from 1 I want 5 characters more, so that is going to take that from 1, which is 1 2 3 4 5, and the fifth one is a comma and then the space. So if I write a 6 here, I'm going to get the string till c. So this is the substring. So there is a similar method called substring, and in that substring, let's go and check the substring. So I'm going to add language dot, and I'm going to add the substring. But in the substring, you add the first and the last, and it only pick the values in between, not including the last one. So let me give you 1 comma 6. So when I give 1 comma 6, that means start from the first index and go to the sixth index, but don't include the sixth one. So that means if I start from the first index, which is T, and C is the sixth one, in substring, the last index is not included. That means C will not be included here. So this is the difference between sub str, where you have a start and you have a number of characters as a second argument, but in substring you have a start and you have an end, but you don't include the end in the result. Next I want to show you is the split, which is very useful, and we often use split. So like I have languages and I need to split based on the comma. And when I split it, I'm going to get a new array of strings. And now you can see that I got a new array of strings. All right. And one thing I want to show you, also do a replace. So if I add a console log, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to add languages dot replace, and I want to replace the HTML with HTML5. All right. And if I save now, you can see the HTML string is replaced with HTML5. All right, so these were some of the string and string methods. And the next thing discuss is about the arrays. So let's see how we can declare the array. So let me have a variable. I'm going to give a name as frameworks, and I'm going to have Angular. Then I'm going to have React. So these are the JavaScript frameworks, and Vue. Okay. And I will going to create one more way. So this is one of the way of creating arrays and declaring arrays and assigning values. The other way you can do is let me have databases, and you can use the constructor object with new keyword, new array, and then you can assign the values. I will assign the value db2, and I'm going to give MongoDB. All right, so now next thing we will see how we can access the elements. So if you want to access the element from the array, you can access it using the index. So I'm going to do framework, and I need to have a value of 0th index. So it's going to give me an Angular. So similarly, I can do it too. And if I write something which is not present in the array, it's going to give me an undefined because it's not there in the array. And if I remove it, I want to just log the complete array, then it's going to give me a complete array with indexes and lengths. If I want to change the value of the 0th index, then I can do like database of 0th, and I can change it to Oracle. And if I save it, and now let's do the console log of databases, then it's going to give me an Oracle. Okay, so we see that how we can declare the arrays, how we can access the values. The next thing we can see that what are the array methods available that we can use. Right, so I'm going to do a console dot log, and I'm going to have I need to find the length of my array. So let me add the length. So I can get 3 as the length of the array. I can also use, if I want to sort the values of the array, I can use sort method. And when I use sort method, you can see that now it is sorted alphabetically. So if similarly I can do it for databases, then it's going to have a MongoDB, Oracle, and SQL. All right, so next we will see that if we want to remove an element from the array, we can use it pop, and then pop will remove the element from the last. So now if I want to see the databases, what will be the values? The database will have only MongoDB and Oracle, because when you use pop method, it's going to remove the last element. Now, if I want to remove the MongoDB, which is the first element, so if you want to remove the first element, a database dot shift, and you save it. So now if I print the console log again here, you will see that now the first element, which was MongoDB, is now removed. Similarly, if you want to add an element then at the last, then you use push. So let me add an element. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a push here. And in the database, I want to push Cassandra, which is a database. And now if I add it, you can see that there was earlier it was MongoDB Oracle, and now Cassandra is the new one added to the array. And if you want to add at the first index, then instead of push, you can do unshift postgre. So unshift will add the element at the 0th index. All right. So one thing I want to show in array is if you want to check the type of array, then if I do type of frameworks, then it's not going to give me an array. It's always going to give me an object, because arrays and objects, they are primitive data types and they are always treated as object. But if you actually want to see whether it's an array or not, there is another way of checking that. So I'll show you what is that way. So what I'm going to do, you can use array, and then you can use is array, and then you can pass the value, and this is going to give me true. Yes, it is an array. So this is one of the way of checking the array. And the other way you can do is let me add a console.log. In the console.log, you can always check the instance of. So framework is an instance of array, then it's going to give me a true. Yes, framework, it is an instance of array. All right. So the next thing we are going to see is the objects in JavaScript. Okay, and how you can declare an object in JavaScript? It's very simple. You just declare a object literal. So this is how you declare an object. Simple. So now this is the object in JavaScript. This is an empty object. You can add properties and methods to this object. So let me add. So if I want to have a console.log and employee, it's going to give me an empty. And if I check the type of, it's going to give me an object. So it is an object. Now let's add the properties in this object. So this is an employee object. So an employee will have an employee ID. Then the employee will have the first name. I'm going to give the page. The employee will have last name. I'm going to give Malvia. The employee will have age. I'm going to give 29. Then the employee is going to have a date of joining. I'm going to give 2010 2019. All right, I'll just make this a string. And you can also have the employee is going to have an address. So an address, it's again an object inside an object, and the city will be Makati, and the country will be Philippines, and I'm going to have a skills, which will be an array. So this employee has skill of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Sorry, I just need to add the colon here. All right. So this is the object and I have created a little bit bigger and complex object with different types in it. So there is a simple properties in it, and there is an object which is an address inside an object, and there is a array which is inside an object, which is skill. So now if I print this object, then I can see the complete object here. Okay. Now let's see how actually you can access the object properties. So let's access the properties. The simple one is I'm going to write is that employee.id. Employer.id is going to give me an ID. So similarly, if I want to have so you can see now I get all the properties on my employees here. So if I write, I want to have an address, then it's going to give me another object. But if I want to access the city of the employee, then I'm going to add a dot and I'm going to add a city. And this is going to give me the city. If I want to access the skills of the employee, then I can access skills and it's going to give me an array. And if I want to have the first index, then I can add an index here and I can get CSS. So this is where you can access the values. Apart from the properties, you can also have methods in your objects. So let me add a method in my object. I'm going to add a full name as a method. And this method is going to return me. I'm going to use string literal again. Okay, and now I have the first name and last name. And now if I want to access the method, I'm going to add full name. Now you can see that when I actually trying to access the full name, just wrote employee dot full name. The similar way I was accessing the properties like employee dot address, employee dot skills, employee dot first name. But when I write employee dot full name, it's going to return me a function. But I don't want the function. I want the values. So you need to have a parenthesis here. If I save now, it says that reference error, first name is not defined at object dot full name. And why is it so? We have first name in the object, and this is because if this is a function and the values you are trying to access inside the function is the first name and the last name, but there is no direct reference. You cannot access the values directly. You need to add this keyword. And when you add this keyword, and if I save it, I get the values. So this keyword here is actually referencing the employee itself. And if you want to see that, I can do a console.log here and I can write this and I can save. If I write this, and it's give me the complete object and our object, which is the employee itself. That is why I have to write this keyword here if I want to access the properties. So this keyword has different behaviors. So let me talk a little bit about this keyword. So if I write this keyword here, console.log, and this, then you will see, and I save it. So you can see that on line number 21, which is console log this, giving me a window object. But if I do the same thing on the line number 16, it's giving me the object itself. So this keyword will always be referenced to its callee. Like when we call this keyword on the line number 21, we are calling it on the script file itself, which is by default the topmost parent is the window object. So here we are calling it on the window object. But in this, you can see the full name. And in this case, when you call the full name, this method is called. And when this method is called, you get this line is executed. And in this case, this will be referencing to the callee. And the callee of this method is the employee itself. So in this way, this keyword is referencing to the employee. So this keyword has a different behaviors. If you directly write this keyword, then so if I write this keyword here itself, then it's going to have an window object because now the callee is the window itself. So it is going to reference to the window. But in this case, when I called employee.fullname, the callee of this full name method was employee. So it is referencing to the employee. I don't need to confuse you much about this keyword, but for now you can always keep in mind that this keyword will always reference or always point to the callee of the function. All right, so there is another way of accessing the methods, and that way is the uh, destructuring. So let me show you the ES6 destructuring. So what I'm going to do is, in destructuring, you can create a variable, and then in the parenthesis, you can you can pick the values from the employee object. So if I want to pick the first name and age, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick first name and I'm going to pick age. All right, and I'm picking those from the employee object. So I'm going to give an employee here. All right. And now if I console dot log the first name, it's going to give me the page. And if I console log age, it's going to give me an age. So this is called destructuring, and it's very useful when actually you work with the React framework. Now let me show you one thing. We will have an array of objects. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an array of employees. All right, so this will be an array of employees. And now I'm going to have this object, and I will add the object here. And now we don't want so many things. We only need few things. So this is one object. Let me create another object. Change this to Amit, and I'm changing this to Dubey. All right, and let's the age is 35, and I'm going to give her age as 25. All right, so now we have an array of objects, and this is the actual a replica, or you can say in real life when you actually build projects, you are going to receive a data always be in a form of array of objects. Like this can be an array of books, or this can be an array of people or person, or this can be an array of cars, and then you pick the values and you display it on your HTML. So how you can access this? So if you want to access this, you can have console log. Let me first print all the employees. So all the employees. So now you can see that each of the element is is an object. So if I want to access the first object, then I'm going to write index 0, and this is going to give me the first object. Now if I want to access the second object, then it's going to give me the second object. And if you need to access the values, then you can write dot, and with the dot you can access the values further. Right, you can access age. So this way you can add access further. So if this had an address as well, it was an object, and I had a city of Makati, and I had a skills, and on the skills I will write HTML. So now if you wanted to access the skills, then what you will do, you need to have an employees, you will have the second object, and then you're going to have skills, and you wanted to have the first object in skills, so you can object it and you will get HTML. So it's very easy. I mean, you need to trace to the element which you want to access, and usually you trace it with the dot in between. So if I wanted to have an address, okay, and I wanted to have a city, I will go and I will add dot, and I'm going to traverse it till the property I want to access. So actually, when in real projects, when you want to send data to the backend server, you actually have to send it in the form of JSON. So JSON is a way of communicating from a front end to the back end and back end to the front end. So the data transfer is happened is in the form of a JSON objects. So this is a JavaScript object. You cannot send the JavaScript object directly to the server. So you need to stringify this, and how we can convert this to a JSON object. So I'm going to do a constant, and I'm going to show you employees JSON, and I will have a JSON dot stringify, and then I'm going to add my employees here. All right, and now let's print this constant. So I'm going to do a console.log, and I'm going to add employees JSON, and I'll save it. So this is the actual JSON. All right, so what I'm going to do now, if we want to see this JSON, then I will click here and I'll just add this JSON, and now you can see that this is the JSON object which you actually send to the server. So this is when you actually send it from your front end to the server, but when you actually receive the response back from the server, which will be in this form, in that case, you actually need to convert it back to an array of objects. And how you can do that? So that you can do, you can write constant emp array, okay, and now JSON dot parse, and now I'm going to parse this employee JSON, okay, and now I'm going to console log this so that you can see the difference of JSON stringify and JSON parse. So now you can see, now this is I am back to my JavaScript array of objects using the JSON parse. So when you send the data to the server, you need to stringify your array of objects and convert it to a JSON string, and then you send it. And when you receive the JSON string, you parse it, and then you get back your array of objects. So this is the idea behind showing you the array of objects, because when actually you build projects, you will be dealing with this. All right, so the next thing I want to show you are the loops in JavaScript, how you can use loops in JavaScript. So JavaScript also have a similar loops like the other languages have. You can use for loop, you can use while loop. So let me show you how you can use for loop, and I'll just remove this. And the first one we can use is the for loop. So I'm going to do for let I is equals to 0. So I want my loop should start from 0, and I want my I length. So let me have the employee length, okay, and I plus plus. All right. So I'm going to loop through all the first name. So what I'm going to do, I will write console.log. We'll have the employees of I dot first name. And now it's going to loop through all the first names. Similarly, if I want to have an age, I can have an age as well. So this was a simple for loop, and you can also do this the same thing using while loop. So let me have a while loop here, 0, and you add a while. This j should be less than your employee's length, okay, and then you can have console.log, and you can have employees of j, and you can have j plus plus, and you will get both your objects. So if from the object, if I only want the ID of the employees, then it's going to give me only the IDs. There is one more, which is the for of loop. And to use the for of loop, you can have a for, okay, and you will have a let variable employee of employees. And now the each employee is actually the each object of the employees array. So if I going to do a console.log, so now it's going to give me both the objects. So it's going to the loop will go on until it gets all the objects of my employees. So you can now, if you want to have the first name, then you can directly use the first names. It's going to give me the first name. Other than this, we also have some higher order array methods which are from the ES6. So let's take a look on the ES6 array methods. So I will just comment this out and I'm going to add from here. All right. So the first one is the for each loop. So let's see how we can use the for each loop. So I'm going to have an employees dot for each, and inside the for each I will have a function. I will have an employee, an individual employee, and then I can use console.log, and I want to have each employee's last name. All right, and I'll save it. So now you can see that using for each, we can actually loop through all the employees and get the access to the values. So this was for each. For each. The other one I want to show is the map. So using map, map will loop through all the employees, and it's going to pick one of the employees, and then you can manipulate the data of that employee, and it's going to return you a new array. So how I can do that? From this employee object, I need to have an array of first names. So if I want to have array of first names, what I'm going to do, I will have a constant, and I'm going to have names and employees dot map, and I'm going to have a function here, employee, and then it can return me the employee dot first name. And now let me print this console.log names. So the names will give me now the array of the names. And I can see that I got undefined, and that is because I am accessing employees, but actually I wanted to access employee emp. Right? So now you can see we get the page and the cache. So this is the map, and the third one I want to show you is the filter. You can also filter it, and let me show you how you can filter it. So I'm going to have a constant employee, okay, and what I want is I want from the employees I will do a filter. Okay, I will have, so all have a very similar way of writing. You need to have an inner function, and then you have, so I'm going to return an employee dot ID is equals to 101, and I'll save it. And now let's console this. So I will do a console.log, and I'm going to have an employee. Sorry, this should be double equals to. So when I do employees, now you can see that from the employees array, I have filtered out some of the employees based on the criteria. All right. The best thing is you can also do chaining of it. So if I do a chaining, so what I get the output of this, I'm going to have a map on it. And in the map, I'm going to have one more function, and I'm going to have an EMP, and I want all the names of those employees which match with the criteria. So here I'm going to return the EMP dot first name. All right, and now you will see that I have did a chaining of these higher order array methods. I did a filter first and then I applied a map on it. The next thing we are going to see is the conditions. So let's see conditions. So what I'm going to do is let me have an variable x and I'm going to assign a value of 10. All right. And I'll do if x equal to 10, then I'm going to have a console log x is equal to 10. Okay. And if this condition doesn't match, then I'm going to have an else. And in the else, I can add console.log x is not equal to 10. Okay. So yes, now we have the value as 10 and then it says yes, x is equal to 10. The condition match, so we will get this value to be printed on the console. But if I change it to 20, then it will say x is not equal to 10. All right. Here I want to show you something about double equals to and triple equals to. So double equals to is the equality operator, while triple equal to is the strict check. So when you say double equal to, it only matches the values, but when you do the triple equal to, it actually matches the value, but it also matches the type of the values on both the ends. So it will also match that yes, x is also type of number and 10 is also type of number. So if I want to show you, then you can see that if I do this, and if I make it 10 here again, it still says x is equal to 10, which is actually not correct because we assign the value of x as 10, which is a number, but now we are checking that x is equal to 10, which is a string. So it is an implicit typecasting. But if I want to do a strict check that check the values, but also check the types of it, then I'll say a triple equal to, and if I save it now, I'm actually going to get x is not equal to 10 because the values are matching, but the types are not matching. So this is called triple equal to strict checking. All right, you can also add a if statement here, and you can say if x is less than 5, then I want to have, and I can add an else here, and I can add actually console dot log x is not less than 5. Then x is less than 5. Yeah. So now you can see that if I make the value of x 4, it's less than 5. And if I make the value of 20, then it's going to say x is not equal to 10. This is the if else, and I wanted to show you that you can add the operators operators here. So if I have a let y is equals to 10, okay, then y is also triple equals to 10, then x or y is equals to 10. I will just change this. All right. So now it says that because this condition x is triple equal to 10 is not matching, but this condition is matching. So it will go here. But if we want that both the conditions should be fulfilled, then only it should go inside. Now in this case, it will not go here. So this way you can write the if condition. You can also use the ternary operator. Let me show you the ternary operator dot log, and I'm going to have if x equals to 10. If this is true, then I need to print something. But if this is false, then I need to print something. So you add a question mark and you add a colon. So if now x equals to 10, if this value is true, then the text here is will be printed, and if it's not true, then the text here will be printed. So now the value of x is 20, which is not satisfying, so this is giving me a false value. So if it's false, then it will not go here and it will go here. That's the reason it's printing false. But if I make this 10, then it's going to print me true. So this is a ternary operator. You can put a condition in a single line statement, and you can check whether the condition is true, then you can display something, or you can show some text. If the condition is false, then you can show some other text. All right. So apart from this, you can use switch case. So let me remove this now, and a constant. I'm going to write a dev is equals to HTML and sorry, HTML. And now I'm going to add a switch, and that switch is going to take a variable which is dev. Okay. And then now I'm going to add cases. So if the case is equals to HTML, okay, then in that case console.log I am HTML developer. Okay, and then break. We can add other cases as well. So I'm going to add a case CSS. Then you can have console.log and you can print here I am CSS developer. You can do a break, and then you can add a default case and you can add a console.log and you can add something I am a beginner. All right, and I'm going to add a break. All right, so now you can see we have an HTML, and this dev, we pass it in the switch and it matches this case, and that's the reason we are getting that I am an HTML developer. If I change it to CSS, it's going to give me I am a CSS developer. And let me change it to JavaScript. Then it's going to go into a default because I don't know JavaScript and I am still learning JavaScript. So I am a beginner. All right. So the next thing we are going to see are functions. Let's see how we write functions in JavaScript. Okay, so if you want to write a function in JavaScript, then you can simply write function show text, name of the function, then you give a parenthesis, and then you use curly braces. And inside the function, let me add console.log I am inside a function. Okay, so this is just a function declaration and a function definition. But if you want to execute this function, you need to call this function. So how you call this function? You write a console, you make a log. So you will write the function name, and then you add parentheses to execute that function. So if I remove the parentheses, then it's going to return me a function. But now if I want that this function should get executed, I need to add parentheses. And now if I add parentheses, you can see that it says I am inside a function. So this is a simple function. So you can also take, this function can also take some argument. Let me take an argument of text. And this time what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass the text from here, good morning. Okay, and now what I pass it, I just want to display that. So this is now says good morning. So this means that in the function you can actually pass arguments, and you can pass more than one argument. So let me add one more argument. I'm going to add good night. Okay, and then I'm going to take another argument here, and this time I'm going to say text2 or text1, and then I can display the other text as well. So I will add here, and I'm going to add here. So this is going to give me good morning and good night. So you can pass n number of arguments in the function. So this was a simple way of declaring and using functions. Now let's see what is the ES6 way of writing functions. So in the ES6, what I'm going to do, I will have a constant show text, all right? And then you add parentheses, and then you add an arrow function, and then you write a curly braces. So this is the ES6 way of writing a function. It's simply, if you want to turn this function into an ES6 way, then I can simply change this to constant show text1. I'm going to write an equal to. Then you can just remove this part, okay? And then you have your open and closing brackets, and then you add a arrow function, and now this is changed into an arrow function. And if I save it, then you can see you still get the same result. So this is the ES6 way of writing and function, and we call it as ES6 arrow function because you use an arrow while writing a function. But the benefit of this arrow function is that you can actually write the whole function in a very short way. I mean, you can reduce it. So if I want to have what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a backtick here, and I'm going to have a one here, and I will, so I want to show you something. So if you have something like this, text one, okay, now I can easily remove this because I am already printing both there, and I'll close this backtick. All right. So now if you have only one statement, a single line statement in the arrow function, then you can actually remove these parentheses as well. So if I remove this parenthesis, and then I can take this to the single line, and if I save this now, you will get same result. So now you can see that how short we have returned the whole function, and now it's just a single line and it actually a function. All right. So the next thing we are going to see is the constructor object. Okay, so the constructor object if is the way of creating when you use object oriented programming. So let me show you how you can create a constructor object. So let me have a function, and I'm going to give a name mobile. So it's always better to use a uppercase while declaring a constructor object. And you, when you declare a function, so this way you can distinguish between a function and a constructor object. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I will have a constructor object, and then this object is going to take values as brand, brand, and I'm going to have a price and a launch date. Okay, and this dot brand is equals to brand, this dot price is equals to price, and this dot launch date is equals to launch date. Okay, so now you have created a constructor object, and now using this constructor object you can actually create the object instances. So let me create an object instance of S2. It's a Samsung S2, and you can use a new keyword to create a instance of a mobile, and I'm going to give Samsung as a brand, and I'm going to give a price $250, and I'm going to give a launch date 10/12/2019. Okay, and now you can actually console this object instance. So let me add this object instance. And now you can see that this is the object instance. So S2 is an instance of an object mobile, and you can create multiple instances of this mobile now. So this mobile constructor object will act as a blueprint, which you can say as a classes in if you are coming from a Java or a C++ background, or if you know the concepts of object-oriented programming, where you have classes and then you create objects using new keyword. We are doing the very similar thing. We created constructor which is acting as a class, and then we created an S2 which is acting as an object of the class. So you can create multiple. You can have 1 plus, and I can have here 1 plus. I can change it to 350, and I can have it was launched in 2018. So in this way you can create as many objects as you want. And let me add here 1 plus. All right, so now you can see I want to show you one thing, that whenever you create an object, so every object will have a proto property. And you can see that this is an object, and this object is having a proto property which is actually an object. And you actually can add properties and methods to this proto property. And if you want to add any method or any object to this proto property, then you can actually do it. So I have the mobile dot prototype dot, and let me add a property, and I'm going to give a 4 GB RAM. And if I save it, then now you will see that there is an extra property added to this proto. So you can create a methods as well in the prototype. So I will add mobile dot prototype dot get launch year, which will be a function, and that function will return us this dot date dot get launch year. All right, now let's see. So this is the proto, and now we have a method as well added to the proto. So it's a good practice that you declare your properties and then you add some methods to the proto object using the prototype. So let me show you one thing. I'm going to have a date object here, so that now if I want to get the launch year, then I can actually add dot get launch year. And if I will do that, then I'm going to get the launch year of Samsung S2, which is 2019. Okay, actually I did something wrong here. It should be get full year. Okay, so now if we see that s2.get launch year, I'm getting 2019. And when you use the date object, you actually get access to some of the methods like launch date dot. You can access get date, you can do get day, you can do full year, hours, milliseconds, get minutes, seconds, time zone, and everything. So if I do a get date, then it's going to give me a date which is 12, and that's what we gave it, 12/10/2019. So this was the old way of writing, but you can actually achieve the same thing using ES6 syntax. It's just a syntactic sugar. Nothing is changing. They are just trying to have a similar concepts of class and objects. So the people who are coming from the Java background or a C++ background, they see a familiarity with the class and objects. So I'm just going to convert this simply into ES6. And now you can see that I have a class. I still have a constructor function, and then I have a method in it. And if you will see it now, you will still see it similar. There's nothing changed. You still have a get launch year method. You still have a RAM. You still can access the prototype and it's the same. So this is called the class, and then you created an object here. So you have a class and object concepts in JavaScript as well. All right, so now let's jump on to window object. So we'll see what is this window object and what is this DOM. All right, so I will just want to do a console log, and I'm going to have a window. All right, and I'll see what actually I get. So I'll do this, or whether I do console log this, I'm going to get the same thing because the callee is still the window object. And I'll just comment this out, and let's see what actually we have on this window object. So this window object has actually have a lot of methods in it, and you can use these methods. So let me show you one of the method, just to have. If I do window dot location, and I'm going to get what is the route of my page is, and all the information related to the browser history. So now if I expand this, you can see that my host is this, the host port number and the page name. And also, if you want to have the access of the complete HTML document, then you can actually do the document here. So I'm going to do a document, and this is going to give me the complete HTML of my page. So you can see this is the complete HTML of my page. So this is the window object, and now let me show you how you can actually select the DOM elements, which is the document object model. And you can actually select the DOM elements. That means whatever the HTML element tags you have in your HTML document, you can access them in your JavaScript as well. Then you have some of the methods which only you can select single element in from using that. So single element. And the other one are the, if you want to have, if you want to access multiple elements. So let me have this multiple elements. So to do that, let me add an HTML structure on the page. So I'm going to add some HTML structure so that now we can play with the DOM, and then we select the DOM, and then let's manipulate the DOM. All right. So I already have some HTML code with me. Let me just copy paste. All right, so I added some HTML. I have simple form, and I have given some CSS style. So you need to know a basic HTML and CSS. So if you are not familiar with it, check out my courses on HTML and CSS, and then you can jump back to this point. So now I have a simple form. So let me show you the form. I have a form with the username, enter an email, submit, a simple contact form. And now let's select something. So let me show you something first. So I have a section here. I have another section here. So now what I'm going to do is, if you want to select a single element, then you can do it by window dot document. We know that using window.document, we actually get the document of the page itself, but we can actually select the elements, a single element on it, document dot get element by ID, and I need to specify an ID here. So let me see what is the ID. I have a contact ID. So if I want to select this, I'm going to add the contact. I can do console log of this. So log, save it. And then let's go to the inspect, and I see. So now you can see that I have a section. So you can remove this window as well. It is an optional because by default it will take window. So let me remove this. So you can select a particular element by ID. You can also use, let me use console.log, and this one which I use very frequently, which is the query selector, and let's select a section itself. Okay, so before saving, I just want to show you that on the HTML structure we have two sections. But when I write section here, actually which section it is going to select? So by default, it will always select the first match. So whenever it will traverse the whole HTML element and document, and as soon as it finds this section, it's going to return that section, and it will not go on looking on the other sections. So these two are the methods on the document where you can have a single element selection. But if you want to select multiple elements, then you can do, let me add a console.log, and I can have document.get element by class name, and I can have the class name here. So let me add a class name of section. And if I add a class name of section, actually I don't have any class with the name section. So let me go to the HTML and add something. So I will just uncomment this. So now I have three LIs with the class item. So let me add that item and let's see what happens. And now it can see that it is returning me an HTML collection. But the drawback of this is when you add the get element by class name, you returns the HTML collection, and you actually cannot apply array methods to this HTML collection. You first need to convert this HTML collection into array, and then only you can apply for loop and access in each item. You can also use, so let me add a tag name here. So the tag name is li. So the tag name will also return you an HTML collection. But there is one property called query selector all, and that query selector all actually returns a node list. So let me add a query selector all, and that query selector all actually returns a node list, and now you can actually apply a for loop on it. So let me actually show you how you can apply a for loop. So what I'm going to do is I will just copy this, okay, and I'm going to add a node list, okay, and then what I'm going to do is node list dot for each node, and I can actually console.log the individual node. So now you can see that I can have an individual element. So this way you can actually access your DOM elements, and you can do the loops, you can apply loops and manipulation on it. So this was the selection of the elements. Now let's see how you can actually manipulate DOM. So I will just remove this and I will add manipulating DOM elements. All right, so now let's manipulate the DOM elements. So what I'm going to do, I will actually change the text of this item. And to change the text of this item, I first need to select this H3. This is an H3. So what I'm going to do, I will have a document dot query selector, and I'm going to have the class name tag underscore underscore list and an H3 inside the list, which will give me an access to this H3. Once I have the access to this H3, I can do H3 dot inner text, change the text to contact list, and this is going to change the text value from item to contact list. So you can actually change from the other methods as well. So apart from the inner text, you can actually change it with h3 dot text content, and using text content also you can change the contact one, and if I save it, it will change to contact list one. So this way you can actually manipulate the element or the text on the HTML document. Now let me change this list. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first get the reference of the UL, and I'm going to do document dot query selector, and this time I want to have dot contact list, and inside the list I need to have an access to UL. If you want to see the HTML structure, I'll just show you so this is the contact list, and inside the contact list, before we try to get an access to H3, but now I'm trying to get an access to UL. I have an access to UL, and on the UL I can do the first element child, and then I can change the text. I will change the text with inner text, and I'm going to change it to HTML. So that's going to change it to HTML. Similarly, if I want to access the last child, so I'm going to do a last child element, and I'm going to change it to JavaScript, and that will get JavaScript. And if you want to have an access to the middle li element, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to have an ul dot children, and I'm going to have an access to the first index, and then I am going to add, so you can add inner text, you can add text content as well, and the third thing is you can add inner HTML as well. So let me add an HTML. What I'm going to do, I will have an h4, I'll close the h4, and here I'm going to write CSS. So now you can see that so the first one we used using the inner text, the last one we used using the text content, and the CSS we used the inner HTML. So you can also add an HTML to your DOM from JavaScript. All right, so you can also apply styles to it. So if I want to apply a style, then let me apply a style to the first element child. I can use dot style dot background, and I'm going to change the background to my favorite color, which is tomato, and that will change the color of the li. All right, so this way you can actually manipulate the DOM elements. And the next thing I want to show is let me remove this, are the events. All right, so you can actually have events in the JavaScript. So, and I will add a constant, and I will just select this submit button. First, let me change the submit button to the toggle, because I want to show you a toggle functionality, how actually you can toggle. So, or let me just copy another one. So I'll just take copy. Okay, so now I have a button, and I'm going to give a toggle here. Okay, so now this button is the toggle button, and what I want, that when I click on this button, I actually want this elements to get disappear then reappear. So I want to hide them. If they are hide, then I want to show them. If they show, then I want to hide them. So let's try to do that. So I'm going to have a btn, and that will be equal to, and I will do one thing, I'll just give an id of toggle so that I can select the element btn, and then I'm going to do document dot get element by id, and the id is toggle. All right, so now I have the button, and now if I want to add an event to it, then I can do button dot add event listener. So this event listener will add an event, and what event I want a click event. All right, and the next thing is what actually going to happen when you actually click on the button. So the next is you need to have a function. I'm going to write an arrow function here, and that function is going to receive an argument which is e, or you can say the event. And let's first see what actually we get this in the event. Okay, all right, so now if I click on the button, I get an event, and let's see what you get on the events. So you have a lot of properties. You can actually get all the information of the element we are doing. So it is to the element a button, and button is having an ID of toggle. There are a lot of properties which actually you can use it. So what we are going to do is I need to have a reference to my UL. So I'm going to take a reference to my UL. So I will have a constant UL. I will have a document dot query selector. And from the query selector, I'm going to select the dot contact list and UL. So now I have an access to the UL. Now I will check the condition that if this UL dot style dot display is equal to block, then I actually want to hide this element. So what I'm going to do, apply display none to it, else apply block to it. So now if I click on it, you can see that now if I click, I get the, so now it's toggling. So this way you can actually, using events, you can actually create interactivity on your static websites. So you can do some events. When you click something, you can change something on the page. So you can also change the styles, you can change the content, you can change a lot of interactivity you can add to your page. All right, and the last thing I want to show you is I want to create a little bit, add your name, you can add your email ID, you can submit it, and when you submit it, I want to have the content to be displayed in the list here as a contacts. And also I need to have a little bit of validation to be applied. So let's quickly jump to that and let's do the form validation. And now I can remove this toggle button again because we don't want this toggle button now. All right, and I will just remove this as well. And we want to have a this contact UL. And in the contact UL, what we are going to do, when you type a username and you type an email ID and you submit it, we are going to dynamically create the li items from the JavaScript. So let's take a reference of first. So I'm going to take a reference of form, and I'm going to have a document dot query selector, and I'm going to have a form. And now then let me have for the input, then for the email, and then for a message. So I'm going to change this to name. This I'm going to change to email. This has become a message, and this is going to become a name. This is become an email, and this is going to become a message. All right, so these are based on the classes and the IDs which I have here. So I'm going to change this to get element by ID, and this is also get element by ID. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a form, and I'm going to add an event. So I'm going to have an add event listener, and I will have a submit event. And when you have a submit event, I'm going to give a function name here. All right, now let me write this function. Right, function submit. On submit, you are going to get an event, and then you can alert, and let me have a clicked here. All right, so when I click here, you actually get alert, but you can see that the page actually gets refreshed. You won't be able to see it here, but let me add a console.log. Okay, and when I do the inspect, now if I click, you can see that there is a click blinking, but actually the page is getting refreshed because we are using the form, and when you submit a form, the submission takes it to the another page. So if we don't want the refresh of the page on submit, we can actually prevent this default behavior. So how we can prevent this default behavior? I will add the event dot, there is a property called prevent default, and this prevent default will actually prevent the default behavior. So now what I'm going to do, let me check if the name dot value is equal to is empty, and email dot value equal to empty, then we need to have a error displayed, because if they are empty, we need to have an error to be displayed that you need to have a mandatory fields. So let me add all fields are mandatory. All right, and if they are not empty, then we can have alert as success. All right, so now let me check. If I click here, it asks me that all fields are mandatory, but what happens if I fill it? So I'm going to have a the page, and I'm going to have a Malvia, and if I click it, so okay, so I need to have an email ID actually there, and if I submit it, it gives me a success. All right, so now I don't want this, and what I want that actually when the error happens, I need to add a text in this, and I need to display this paragraph tag. So what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to have the message dot style dot display, and that will be equals to, why this typo happens every time when I type style. Okay, and this should get block. Okay, and when it gets block, I need to add a message dot text content to it, and that will be equals to my this message. Okay, and then if it's else, what I need to do is I will create an li. So let me create an ul element that is equals to document dot get element by id contact underscore underscore ul. So now I have selected this ul. Now I need to create the dynamic li items, and I need to add the li items. So now let me create an li. So I will have an li, and I'm going to do a document dot create element. So now I have created an li element. The next thing is I need to append to this li, and what I'm going to append, I need to append a text node in it because I need to have some text in it, right? So I'm going to do document dot create text node, and inside the text node, what I want to display, I want to display the name name value, and I need to display the email ID. So I need to have an email dot value. All right, so now we can append this li item to our ul element. So now I have an ul element dot append this li. All right, so now after doing this, what I want that I want to clear my forms as well. So let me clear my form as well. So I'm going to have a name dot value equals to this empty, and I will have email dot value equals to empty. Okay, so we have done a lot of things here. So now let's try something. If I write the page and if I write malvia@gmail.com and if I click on search, I actually get this. All right, so now let's see what happens when actually we click on submit. So when we click on submit, it actually says all fields are mandatory. And if we fill the form back and if we submit, we get it. But we also want that this should get removed. So what we can do for that is we can add an on click event here. So let me add an on click, and when you click it, you need to have a remove message method here, and the same I can add on the email as well, and then we will just write the definition of this method. So when you do this, what you want is you want that this message should be display none back. So let me add none. Okay, so I need to add a function here, remove message, and now if I click here, I actually sees the error, and when I click here, the error actually is hidden. So I can do again, I can do click, I can add Nikesh, and I can add nick@gmail.com. I can click, it can more be added, I can add test, and I can do test@gmail.com. Added, but when I refresh it, it will clear out because we are not storing the information anywhere, and it's just on the browser, so disappear when actually we refreshed because we are not storing the state anywhere. So I hope we have covered a lot of things in this video about JavaScript. If you are beginner, then this is absolutely fine. You have learned a lot of concepts, fundamentals, syntaxes of JavaScript and ES6 as well. So I hope you like the video, and a thumbs up is appreciated. You can put in the comments if you want to have some deep dive into some concepts. Let me know on the comments. I can create a video on it and I can try to explain you more better. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you need anything, or if you want me to make a video on some concepts with the deep dive. I'll do that as well. And you can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. I will add the links in the description below, and please make sure you subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you get notifications when I create these awesome videos. Thank you. Thanks for watching.